Welcome back to the special day, Shushan Purim. Today is Shushan Purim. Why is it called Shushan Purim? Because in Israel, or I shouldn't say Israel, in any cities around the world which are resemble the city of Shushan, which had a wall around it, so then they celebrate Purim today, because in the Megillah, it says in the Megillah that in Shushan they celebrated, they didn't actually rest from their enemies until a day later. And they celebrated the celebration on the 15th of Adar, which is today. And it's a big discussion about this. The cities which are surrounded by walls, like Shushan, similar to Shushan, so they celebrate Purim on the 15th of Adar. And hence in Jerusalem, which is still surrounded by a wall, the city of Jerusalem, so they celebrate Purim today. And right before we began, my son called me from who lives in Jerusalem, and he's my daughter as well. She's there right now. So they're having a Purim Suda right now in the shul. So he was calling me in his costume. It sounded like he was a little bit shicker as well, but it was so they're celebrating Purim. So this is called Shushan Purim. So it has a little bit. It still has the light of Purim for us, even though we celebrated Purim yesterday. It still has the radiance of Purim in the air. And that's why certain adjustments are made in davening, that we don't do certain things, because the simcha, the joy of the day, is still very present, very extant. So it's Purim still. So we have to still speak about Purim. So I have to apologize. I'm going to say something which I said last night at the Suda, which we had in our house. We had a beautiful Suda. I'll tell you more about it afterwards. And it was very, very nice, and a lot of singing, a lot of dancing, and so one of the things which I said last night, which I want to repeat again, and then segue into the portion. I had a very big challenge this morning because I was very tired last night. I had a few drinks and very, very tired, and I had to get up early this morning, and I didn't get up early this morning. I got up earlier, but I didn't get up as early as normal. So, but I still want to speak about the portion. So in the book of Esther, there's actually an interesting contrast which we see between two, I'm going to say big personalities, but one is a good personality, the other one is a bad personality, Mordechai and Haman. So it's a study in contrast between two personalities. Because on the one hand, Mordechai, the very last message of the Megillah, which I mentioned last night, whenever a person speaks, whatever the last message is the final message which stays with people. What is the last message of the Megillah? The last message of the Megillah is describing Mordechai and how he was such an exceptional personality. And it says, Ki Mordechai ha-Yehudi, Mishta lemelach asher gadol leYehudim v'ratzu l'rov echav. He was particularly sought. He found favor with the multitude of his brethren. Found favor. He was very popular, and people liked him. And the reason why that's so important to realize and to understand is because when we go through the story, we see that really Mordechai was he stimulated the final hammer blow from Haman by not bowing down to Haman. Up until him not bowing down to Haman, everyone else were, and he was satisfied. But because Mordechai wouldn't bow down to him, that's what incensed him so much, and that's what broke the camel's back and made him decide to create this whole plan of genocide against the Jews. So he was really the instigator of this. So you could imagine that the Jewish people, the communities, were not too happy with Mordechai, because they were really putting the Jewish community, he was putting the Jewish community into the peril that they were in. But yet, nonetheless, he was accepted, and he was respected, and he was revered, and he was loved by everybody. As the pasuk says at the very end, he was ratzui l'rov echav. He was desirable and liked by everybody, by the multitudes of people. So the question is, how was that the case, and why was he so well liked? And the answer is because the pasuk goes on and says, because dorish tov lamo, because he was the kind of personality that sought out the good of people. That he was known to be someone who sought the good and looked for the good of everyone. He wasn't into this for himself. He wasn't looking for honor. He wasn't looking for riches. He really cared about the community, and whatever he did, and every move that he took, And every decision he made, he was a extremely important person. He was a member of the Sanhedrin. And whatever he did was only for the good of the Jewish community. And they sensed that. And we know in our own experiences, when people really care about you, then you like that person. You like people who care about you. And he was known, he had this radiant personality of caring and seeking the good, seeing the good in people, seeking the good, and that's what made him so well liked. And then the very last line of the Megillah, I just really discovered this yesterday, noticed this yesterday, the last line of the Megillah is Dov v'shalom l'chol zaro, that he had peace with all of his descendants. He had a fantastic relationship with his family because he saw the good and sought the good in his family members, in all the people that he encountered. And that was the key to his shalom bias, the shalom in his home, the peace in his home, and the peace between him and his next generation, his children, grandchildren. So if we really want to, as a side, what's the trick? What's the key to having shalom? What's the key to having peace in the home? What's the key to having peace within the family with generations? Is think about how much do I really care about them, or how much am I thinking about myself? And I mentioned this last night as well, that sometimes we are particular with other people, not because we really care about that person, but because it annoys us, because we get frustrated about certain things. And it's us. It's really about us. It's trying to satisfy my own needs and my own deficiencies or my own frustrations, to kind of allay my frustrations, that we then issue our complaints, and we could criticize people. And if we really think about the benefit of the other individual, it changes the playing field. And that's what it says over here, that Mordechai was a Doresh Tov La'amo. He sought out the good for everyone. He only cared about the good of everyone around him, and that's what gave him his popularity, and that's what achieved the peace, the shalom, which he had in his home. So that's one personality, a person, and that's the last message. Isn't that? It's just a very interesting idea. That's the last message of the Megillah. See the good in people. Look for the good of people. And that's the key to success. That's the key to shalom. That's the last message of the Megillah. But that's Mordechai. You contrast him to Haman. And it's an amazing thing in chapter 5, if you have the stone edition of the Chumash, the book of Esther is at the back of the book. It's on page 1257. So in chapter 5 of the Megillah, verses 11 through 13. This is towards the beginning of the story, when when Haman is experiencing this disrespect from Haman, from Mordechai. I'm still in this backwards, maybe I'm still shikah, I'm saying it backwards. When Haman is still experiencing the disrespect from Mordechai, and he's already been invited at this point of the story. He'd been invited by Esther to a special mishta, a special banquet together with Esther and Achashverosh. So he's very respected. He feels very chuffed the fact that he's being invited to this special banquet with them. But all of this is no good, because the verse goes on to say, he says as he came out that day, Haman went out joyful and exuberant because he was invited to this banquet with the king and with Queen Esther. But when Haman noticed Mordechai in the king's gate, and that he neither stood up nor stirred before him, Haman was infuriated with Mordechai. Nevertheless, Haman restrained himself and went home. He sent for his friends and his wife Zeresh, and Haman recounted to them the glory of his wealth. He recounted them the glory of his wealth, and of his many sons, and of every instance where the king had promoted him and advanced him above the officials and royal servants. And he said, moreover, Queen Esther, he's telling this to his wife, Queen Esther has invited no one but myself to accompany the king to the banquet that she had prepared. And tomorrow I'm invited by her along with the king, with all of this great stuff, with the riches, with the family, with being the prime minister, by being invited to this banquet with the king and Queen Esther. He then says, yet all this means nothing to me, so long as I see that Jew Mordechai is sitting at the king's gate, and he's not bowing down to me. Whatever I have, all the good, all the blessing, everything, I have the riches, I have family, I have success, I have wisdom, I have everything. There's not a single thing in my life that I don't have. But that one Jew who's not bowing down to me, that makes everything else completely not worth it. It's unbelievable, right? It's an unbelievable, picture over here. And unfortunately, we can relate to this sometimes in our own lives. We can have so much and so much and so much, but because we're fixated on what we don't have, it's all worth nothing. All that we have, all the blessings we have become just just pale. They pale in comparison to that one thing which I become fixated, right? This I need. I need to get this job. And if I don't get this job, then that's it. And all the other brachas, all the other blessings, all the other experiences, all of the other bounty that I have in life is all garnished. There's nothing. It doesn't relate, doesn't emotionally connect to me because I'm so preoccupied with this one thing which I don't have. But that's what Haman was doing. That's what Haman was. So we see a real contrast of somebody who is preoccupied with the good, seeing the good and seeking the good of others, and the other exact opposite of someone who is completely preoccupied with the negative, what he doesn't have, and is not able to even tap into the goodness that he has because of one thing which he doesn't have. And for that is the story, the story of life. It's the challenge of life of being able to see the good and appreciate the good and force ourselves, because it takes effort to see the good. Some people maybe have a little more of a natural proclivity towards it, but I think a lot of people have a challenge with forcing themselves to be able to see the good, focus on the good, and appreciate all the good in their life. And that's a challenge, and that's an ongoing challenge. It's the theme it's one of the themes in the portion as well, and that's the connection to the parsha this week, because on page 575 we have the passage. These portions are going into a lot of sacrifices, a lot of descriptions of sacrifices. Some of them are more obscure and difficult to understand, but one of them, which is very relatable, is on page 575, which is called the Karban Toda. Karban Toda, the sacrifice, the Thanksgiving sacrifice. And the portion describes the details of it. In the footnote on page 575, I'll read that. It says, when someone has survived a life-threatening crisis. Now, the Thanksgiving offering is brought specifically as an obligation for this situation. When a person has survived a life-threatening crisis, he brings a toda, a thanksgiving offering to express his gratitude to God and his recognition that it is God who saved him. And from Psalm 107, David's hymn of gratitude, the sages derive that there are 4 categories of people who are required to bring the offering. Those that survived the desert or other potential hazardous journey. That's why, I'll get to some more practical things afterwards. Another category is dangerous imprisonment. Another category is serious illness. And number 4 is a sea voyage. The Thanksgiving offering is a form of peace offering. One of the categories of sacrifice is a peace offering. Unlike a sin offering, it's a peace offering, but with 2 differences. The Toda is eaten for a day and a night, while a regular peace offering is allowed to be eaten over 2 days and 1 night. And also a Toda, Thanksgiving offering, is accompanied with 40 loaves of bread. With 40 loaves of bread, that's a lot of bread. The person bringing would have to bring 40 loaves of bread. That's the 2 differences between this offering and a regular peace offering. And that's what the Torah describes over here. The Netziv, famous commentary, wonders, why these differences, and also technically, this creates a formidable challenge over here. It's one thing to bring a sacrifice and eat it, and even if the time period for eating the sacrifice is shorter in comparison to a regular peace offering, again, this offering is only over 1 day and 1 night. A regular peace offering, you can do it over 2 days and 1 night. So, a regular peace offering, you can do that. 40 loaves of bread, I'm supposed to, I can't even eat, I have a hard time eating one bulky. To eat 40 loaves of bread. How am I supposed to eat 40 loaves of bread in the course of 1 day and 1 night? plus the meat of the sacrifice, even though maybe it's shared with the Kahanim. I don't know about, but anyway, it's a lot to eat. It's a lot to eat over a short period of time. So the Netziv says, the reason why it is this way is because it forces the person to do what? To invite everyone over, to invite people over, and to make a banquet, make a party to share the celebration of the salvation, to share the celebration of the salvation, to publicize the miracle of whatever the person survived. And when you share it with other people, so everyone can eat now you have a Suda, and everyone partakes of that, of the 40 loaves and of the 40 loaves of bread. Because that's the importance of gratitude. Gratitude is not something which is just to keep to ourselves, but we have to share, we have to express our gratitude to everybody else as well. And especially when a person is saved in this fashion, in one of these 4 ways. So therefore so the Torah designs it in a way to force the person to share it and to publicize the miracle with everybody else around him. Right, and that's the Korban Toda. So, Korban Toda means Thanksgiving offering. So that's all very well for those days when they had a Korban Toda sacrifice to do that. So, what do we do today? I mean, obviously we say thank you, and saying thank you is always please and thank you. Our parents, we teach our kids this way: please and thank you, say thank you, and that's a given that we always say thank you. But is there anything else? What other things can we do what do the rabbis suggest? What do the rabbis advise with regard to how to express gratitude, aside from saying thank you, whatever we do? Now, obvious blessings, of course, are expressions of gratitude. That's a given. But there are certain things specifically. And the Medrash says that the only sacrifice, the only offering which is going to be present in the ultimate future world, I don't quite understand this, but this is what the Medrash says. The only sacrifice which is going to be extant in the end of days is going to be the Korban Toda, the Thanksgiving offering. So the reason why I don't quite understand it and get a chance to look into it in more detail, because we do speak about in the Shemona Esrei, when we talk on Yom Tov and Shabbos, we talk about the aspiration for the rebuilding the Beis Hamikdash and the bringing of sacrifices over there. So didn't had a little bit of a difficulty reconciling that, because if the Medrash says that the only sacrifice which is brought is the Thanksgiving offering, so why are we talking about the other sacrifices as well? I was perhaps conjecturing that there's different stages of the ultimate end of days. There's the first coming of the Mashiach, and then the building the Beis Hamikdash again, and then there's an ultimate period called La'asad Lava, which is the ultimate period of resurrection of the dead and the end of days. So maybe we're referring to different stages along that track, and maybe the ultimate end of days, or the only sacrifice which will be brought, is just this Thanksgiving offering. So that's just a theory right now, without having gone through it any further. But in any event, it just really underscores the importance of gratitude. That gratitude is so essential and fundamental. It's the only offering which will exist at the end of days. So what are the things do we find, can we do to really concretize our gratitude? So, one of the Musa Sfarim writes as follows. He says that when a person feels a sense of gratitude, when you feel that sense of gratitude, translate that gratitude into something else. Turn it into a commitment. Make a commitment as a result of that gratitude, because that's really what's with the offering itself. Because I have this gratitude, now bring an offering. So the same thing, whenever we feel that sense of gratitude and we feel a sense of appreciation, we get that spark of appreciation, turn it into something. Turn it into some type of commitment. There's a story told about a 13th century rabbi whose name was Rabbi Tzidkiah ben Avram Anoy. I can't really pronounce his name. He was very, very sick, very, very deathly ill. And he had either a dream or a vision of a man holding a candle, and he was blowing the candle out and then relit it. He blew it out and relit it. Blew it out and relit it. And this was the vision he had, and it was a very strange thing. So he asked in the vision, what are you doing? So he said to him, the old man said to him in the vision, he said, this candle is your soul. And the blowing out of the candle implies that really your time has come. and your soul is going to go away, is going to go back. But Hashem understands that that there are things still you can do, and there are still things that you can accomplish in your life, and you're being given a second chance. So it was being put out and then being relit as like a reinforcement to him that even though maybe his time is up, but there are still things he can do, and he's being given an opportunity for a second chance. And when he had that vision afterwards, when he did get better, he actually got better. He made a commitment that he was going to write a commentary on the Torah. And the commentary he wrote on the Torah is the very, very famous commentary called the Shabbalei Haleket, a very famous commentary. And that was an example of how a sense of gratitude shouldn't just, disappear and just dissipate and go away. But the sense that when we get that we capture that feeling of gratitude, turn it into something, to turn it into a commitment, turn it into an actual commitment to do something different as an expression of that gratitude. So that's that's one thing we can do. But also with the davening itself, it's only when I'm speaking to myself, it's only when I think about this, talk about this, I suddenly realize, again, I mentioned before, the brachas, of course, all the blessings we make over food are given. But even in the davening itself, the Shemona Esrei, 3 times a day, what's one of the main features of the Shemona Esrei? One of the main features of the Shemona Esrei is the Modim bracha. Modim anachnu lach. Modim. And Modim it's a beautiful bracha, which really, let's see, in the Art Scroll, if you have the Art Scroll Siddur, in the Shemona Esrei, you call Modim. And it's the part where we bow down, and it's the bracha of gratitude, and it's a time to really contemplate and think about. And it's here every day. We've got this. These are the blessings we have. We have all of these structures in our lives which stimulate all of the things which we need to do. Modem anachnu lach, she'ata Hashem Elokeinu v'Elokei Aviseinu. Thank you, Hashem, that you are our God. And story told about a certain student of a Rosh Hashiva, and the Rosh Hashiva davened a very, very long Shemona Esrei. And, this is a normal thing in yeshivas. The boys want to emulate their Rosh Hashiva. So there's one particular one boy wanted to emulate his Rosh Hashiva with his long Shemona Esrei, and he tried to copy and try to kind of really focus and concentrate, and he just had a hard time. He didn't have the stamina to say the Shemona Esrei as long as the Rosh Hashiva did. And he was talking to the Rosh Hashiva. He says, Rebbe, he said, what's the secret? How are you able to concentrate and focus for so long? With all the brachas and understand all the brachas and focus. So the Rosh Hashiva said to him, he says, listen, I'll be honest with you. He said, the rest of the Shemona Esrei I say at the same pace as everybody else. But when I get to Modim, when I get to this Modim bracha, I pause beforehand and I think in my mind about all the blessings that Hashem has given to me. All the brachas in my life, my health, my children, my job, whatever I have. And even if I don't have this, but I have that, and I don't have this, I have that. There are so many blessings. I remember once there was a rabbi who I met, a very famous rabbi, Shimon Schwab, who he lived in Muncie, and he was formerly the head of the German Jewish community, the German Jewish community in Washington Heights. He was a rav in Frankfurt as well, in Europe beforehand. So when he was much older, he lived in Muncie, where my brother lives, and he lived around the corner. And we used to daven in the same shul together. There was a shul. We entered that shul to daven there, and Rabbi Schwab was always there. And Rabbi Schwab was in a wheelchair. Like towards the end of his life, he lost the mobility in his legs. He couldn't walk, so he was stuck in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. The last, I think, maybe 10, 15 years of his life in a wheelchair. So someone asked him, how do you maintain your joy and your happiness in life despite the fact you can no longer walk? So he said to him, if let's say I offered you $10 million, would you be happy with that? He said, sure, yeah, of course, wouldn't we be happy with $10 million? Let's say, after I gave you the $10 million, I said to you, can you give me $1 million back? Would you still be happy? Yeah, of course, $9 million is still good. Okay, 9 million, 10 million, it's all the same. See, that's the same thing. He says, the amount of brachas I have in my life, it's like more than $10 million. So if $1 million is taken from me, I can still I have so much reason to be happy. so much reason to be thankful. And that's why it doesn't make it. So I'm missing one piece. I'm missing a million. I'm missing a small, tiny piece of the infinite blessings, the bounty that I have. I'm still happy. I'm still very happy. So this Rosh Hashiva said to this boy, he said that I go through in my mind, I pause. That's what takes me so long in the Shemona Esrei. I pause and I think about all the brachas, all the blessings that Hashem has bestowed upon me, and that's what takes me so long before I say this bracha of modim, of gratitude. But however, Rav Hutna, my Rosh Hashiva's Rebbe, the Rebbe of my Rebbe, Rav Hutna, the famous Rav Hutna, he points out a very, very interesting insight into the word gratitude in Hebrew. Gratitude. So how do we say thank you in Hebrew? Todah. Todah. That's gratitude. However, the word, or another way, if a person is modeh, he's modeh. He gives thanks. He gives thanks. This isn't it's just a variation of the word, but the word todah or modeh, these words have a second definition, and that is admission. Admission is the same word in Hebrew. So if a person is modeh, whatever, he admits to the truth. That's called admission, right? Who does all these different, just etymologically different variations of the same word, but admission is the same word as well in Hebrew. So we have the word todah means gratitude as well as admission. And on the surface, they seem like different things. If I admit to you, or if I make an admission in court, it's the same word. So why is the word todah the same for admission as for gratitude? And the answer is because when you look at gratitude, when you think about what's happening, the psychology of gratitude is that I recognize that either I was deficient and you provided that deficiency, or that I was missing something, or that you have something which you had something to give to me. It presupposes an admission to my dependency upon you, because if I don't want to feel that I'm dependent upon you, I can't say thank you to you. Only when I admit that you have the power, you have something that I don't have. When I admit that and I recognize that, I admit it, that you have something and I'm deficient and you're providing it, that's what allows me to have gratitude. And that's why the same word is for admission as for gratitude. So Rav Hutna says that how do we know whether the word todah is admission or is it gratitude? So he says it depends if the letter which follows it is a shin or the word al. So if I'm gonna read the bracha over here, which I was referring to before, of modim, and you'll see the difference. It says modim anachnu lach. So it says modim, which I typically in the Odd Scroll translates it as I thank you, but Rav Hutna says it doesn't mean thank you. Here it means admission. Modim anachnu lach. We admit that atah, that you are God, that you are our God. Because when it's followed by the letter shin, which means that, then the word modim means I acknowledge. We acknowledge that you are the God. You are the source of power. We acknowledge that you are God, the source of the God of our forefathers, the rock of our lives, the shield of our salvation for generation to generation. I admit that. I agree. I'm not going to sit on a high horse and think that I'm in control of everything. I'm going to admit the fact that I'm deficient and I'm dependent and you are the source of everything. I admit that. I acknowledge it. I get it into my bones. I get it. I understand it. I admit it. And then, noda l'cha, then the next word is noda l'cha, al, and the word al is regarding. Therefore we give thanks to you for all of the blessings you give to us. Therefore, we give gratitude. So it's a sequence. I admit that you are the source, and therefore we thank you. I thank you. So that's it. So admission, which is the submission, really. When you think about it, I'm admitting that you are the source of something, and therefore in that lies submission, and in that submission now lies the ability for me to thank you and to give gratitude to you and to say thank you. Right. So that's the wisdom of the Hebrew language. But that bracha, this bracha of modim, we say 3 times a day in the Shemona Esrei. But there's one really unique dimension of this bracha. Never thought of this before. and that is that with the entire Shemona Esrei, when we do the Shemona Esrei by ourselves silently, and then after we finish, then the Chazan does the repetition. So one of the rules of the repetition of the Shemona Esrei is don't talk, don't have conversations. This is always sometimes for shuls. They have this challenge: stop talking. You have to stop talking during davening. So especially during the repetition of the Shemona Esrei, don't talk. Don't start schmoozing with each other during the repetition. So that's the case. So therefore, everyone stands there silently listening to the Chazan do the repetition. There's one exception. When everyone does talk, when everyone's allowed to talk in the repetition. And that is with the Modim Bracha. Because the way it works is the Modim Bracha of gratitude, when the Chazan gets to that Bracha, he says it, but we all say a parallel paragraph, a parallel one. In the Art Scroll, if you have an Art Scroll, you can, this in the Art Scroll Siddur, page 112, you can see this, but it's in the parallel paragraph is what's recited by the congregation. So while the Chazan is reading, we're reading. It's the only time you do that. I mean, this morning in Shul, I realized that this is the only time in Shemona Esrei where not only, that we're allowed to actually read and say something at the same time as the Chazan. And we're not listening to him. Why is that? So the famous earlier commentary called the Abudraham, he says the reason is because there's no... Okay, let me backtrack a second. The whole idea of the repetition of the Shemona Esrei and the Chazan doing it for us, it dates back to an idea that when people didn't have siddhs themselves and didn't know the words themselves, the Chazan was what's called a shlich tzibor, an agent of the community. He was like petitioning on behalf of the community, of the congregation. So the Chazan is really, praying on behalf of the whole community who don't have the siddur. So that's what. So all the brachas. So we still do this, even though we have a siddur. We still keep this tradition going. But essentially, the rest of the Shemona Esrei, with all the other brachas, the Chazan is petitioning to God on behalf of us. He's the shliach tzibor. He's the agent of the community. So the Abudraham says, for every other request, you can have an agent. When it comes to gratitude, there's no agency for gratitude. No one else can thank the person other than yourself. You can't say, can you say thank you for me? That you can't do. Thank you has to come from you and you alone. There's no agency for thank you. And that's why when it comes to the bracha of thank you that the Chazan is doing, he has to do it and we have to do it at the same time. Because the Chazan can't do it for us. I thought it was a beautiful understanding. So the message of this is that to, not just to say thank you, of course we should say thank you, but to expand upon it, to develop it, to make it much more part of our lives, to turn our thank yous into blessings on our foods, into blessings on the things which we have, and to turn it into commitments, to translate our appreciation into tangible commitments, and to do it ourselves, and to really think about what thank you is, and to admit and submit ourselves to the Almighty for the bounty that He gives to us. And we should all say thank you. We should all say thank you, Hashem. We should thank you, Hashem. So I said I'm going to bring it back to the Suda last night because we had Rabbi Duskus who just, fortuitously came in. I didn't plan it, but Hashem planned it. It was all planned out because I didn't know what I was going to speak about this morning, right? I didn't know what I was going to speak about. And, I didn't plan what I'm going to speak about now based upon that. It was just, I found this, I found that, I just landed on this. And it all kind of fits together. All fits together like a puzzle. Because Rabbi Duskus came in, shared some ideas and started singing a song. He started singing a song. And what was he singing? He started singing, we're going to start singing, Thank You, Hashem. That was the song. So I'd like to end off with the song, Thank You, Hashem. And I'm going to share the screen. We're going to watch us dancing from last night, saying Thank You, Hashem. And we should turn our Shushan Purim and remember the last message of the Megillah. The last message of the Megillah is Mordechai seeing the good, seeking the good of others, and that translates into us seeing the good in our lives, appreciating all that we have, and especially appreciating all God gives to us, and to turn that appreciation into commitments in our lives, not just to make it go stale. We should be committed. We should make commitments in our lives as well.